Welcome to the Retail Reality Show.
Welcome to the Retail Reality Show. Another great episode and lots of new faces on this call. Today it's actually our first episode. We just figured out, Nicholas, with you as a new co-host next to Martin. So we are three now. Much better content, even more content. So I'm really excited about that. And we already did an NRF recap. So people might have seen and heard it. Neha, you have also been to NRF.
Yes.
But this time, it's about the great topic. Yeah, how do we even call it? It's the Metaverse. It's the extended reality. It's the virtual reality. We will go a little bit into more detail. And it's a great pleasure to have Neha Singh from Obsess today with us. Neha is or has been on the product side of Vogue Business, has an engineering background with Google and the MIT, and has now founded Obsess. We got to know each other a while back, I would say 1 or 2 years ago. And recently, you launched the first Apple Vision Pro apps in a retail or for retailers and in a brand context, and that caught my attention. And that's why I thought, Neha, you need to be on our show. And I'm really glad you're here today. Maybe, Neha, you want to quickly introduce you quickly?
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Nino and Nicholas. Super excited to be here. I'm Neha Singh. I'm the founder and CEO of Obsess. We are an immersive commerce platform, and our vision is to change online shopping to make it much more experiential and interactive for consumers. And all of the technologies that you mentioned, like VR, AR, Metaverse, etc., are all technologies we are using in order to achieve that vision. And we work with large global brands across a variety of different verticals to take their online shopping into the next generation.
Cool. And even before Apple Vision Pro, I mean, we did lots of stuff together. And I think you were behind Charlotte Tilbury. And I think it was back in the days when I think Metaverse even came up, when Meta kind of brought their first vision of that. And then I saw great experience from Charlotte Tilbury, which ran in a browser, I think, at that time. Co-shopping, virtual shopping, where you could invite your friends. And it was a virtual world. And you did B2B showrooms. So I really like that. And I'm glad we can spend some time together today.
All right. So let's kick this off, I would say. Welcome, Neha. We're very happy to have you.
Thank you.
So before we start, we have put together three quick questions. It's almost breaking
Icebreaker.
my tongue. 3 quick questions. Repeat that
Tongue
3 times.
twister and icebreaker.
So first one, mixed or virtual reality?
Mixed reality. Just all the different realities will be the future if one which one or the other.
I hear you. Okay, Roblox or Fortnite? Interesting one.
Both depends on the audience that you're trying to reach. Obviously, Roblox is a much younger audience, a very different kind of platform. Fortnite is an older audience, like more majority males. So it just depends on, the use case and the type of brand.
I'll add a very short question to that. Does it surprise you that both continue to have that large or that kind of like great traction that they still seem to have? Does it surprise you that they're not like, it doesn't?
Not at all. I think it's only going to increase. And I think there'll be many other platforms and games similarly to Roblox and Fortnite that will evolve all around, maybe kind of different use cases, different communities that will grow a lot.
In that context, actually, I'm watching also another one. Have you heard of Zepeto?
Yep.
That was new to me, and it's a big platform in Asia. So watch out, also our listeners, if you want to learn something new, just check it out. It's crazy what they do and the amount of people that are on that platform already.
Yeah, it's very similar to Roblox, but huge in the Korea market. And a lot of brands have entered Zepeto already, and many more are planning to.
Super, thank you. And then, third question, OpenAI or Anthropic or anything else?
My view is too early to tell. I think we are still in the very, very early phases of AI, even though obviously we have seen so much kind of consumer-facing progress in the last year and a half, but so much is changing. So can't quite place my bet yet.
See,
Okay.
sad. I wanted to know which stock to buy, but well, maybe later. Okay, thank you.
This is not an investment advice. Please treat everything we talk about in this call as I'm listening to the A16C podcast, and that's always the disclaimer. I know by heart because I'm listening to that so much.
All right, thank you, Neha.
Cool. I think we are warmed up, and Nicola's tongue is also a little bit more flexible now.
3 quick questions. It's not that easy, though.
Yeah. So I think if we start from the top, and I think today it's all about, we just spoiled a little bit, Apple Vision Pro, mixed reality, virtual reality. And I just did, for the fun of it, I started in Google Trends. Google Trends is always a great thing to start with, to just get a feeling what's hot in the market today, what's not hot in the market today. And a few years back, I think 2022, Metaverse, I would say, had its moment. And you can see that in Google Trends, there was a little bit of a spike. But if you compare this term Metaverse, which was trending at that time, with other things like Fortnite, Apple Vision Pro, Roblox, it's quite an interesting thing, because the term Metaverse is almost irrelevant in relation to the other things I just said, but also in absolute terms today. So my first question would be, and before we deep dive too much into this, what would be your definition, and how should we and our listeners think about virtual reality, mixed reality, Metaverse in the future? Can you maybe give us your view, Neha?
Yeah, and also you forgot the latest one, which is spatial computing.
Oh, thank you. Spatial.
I think that's
Apple. Hello, Apple.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, the way that we think about it, these are all terms that are, can go in and out of the hype cycle. I started the company about, 7 years ago. And at that time, like virtual reality and augmented reality were the big terms, but there were all these other variations like MR and XR. And then, as you said, Metaverse kind of became really trendy in 2022. And now it's like spatial computing. But the way that I think about it is that the future of the internet is 3D. We started in the 90s, with plain text sort of websites. Then we could add images, then we could add videos, because we had enough network bandwidth to be able to stream kind of larger files. And eventually the internet is going to get closer and closer to real life in terms of its interface. Real life is 3D. It's all around us. It surrounds us. And we have been restricted to the current interfaces like a mobile phone or a desktop, like these 2D screens, because of just the limitations of the technology, so far. But as technology improves and, now GPU is getting so much more powerful, and, 5G and 6G and all of the G's coming up, we will just be able to make our digital interfaces much richer and closer to real life. And that's how, as humans, our brains actually process information in the most natural way. So to me, all these different terms are basically a part of that next generation interface to the internet that's closer to real life. And, the specific terms, I think, will come and go. Maybe some new term will come up in a couple of years that will be trendy. But that's really kind of how we think about it and what we are investing in.
Mm-hmm. So you would even say, looking at this from an evolutionary perspective, so first version of the internet and the website, then came e-commerce, the search. Next revolution was probably mobile and cloud computing. And then now it's, I think if I listen correctly, next wave of innovation will be 3D. Let's call it 3D.
3D, immersive. Yeah, we use the term immersive a lot now. But yeah, also, Nicholas, to your other point, that's why like the growth of Roblox and Fortnite is not surprising at all, because they are like worlds that are a little bit closer to our real life, because, we live in a 3D world, we live in an immersive environment, and our digital activities are moving to those types of platforms and environments right now in sort of more isolated forms. But over time, as network and processors get even more powerful, we'll be able to do that across more activities.
Yeah, maybe I'll add some like a question in between that actually is something that I've sort of considered or thought about quite a lot, especially in the past 2 or 3 years. So all these augmented reality or mixed reality use cases, the immersive use cases come up. But whenever I interact with them, I still see that there is a lot of technological challenges that we are facing at this point in time. So just one example, I was in LA, in Venice Beach, and there is like a AR experience where you can actually sort of walk on the beach, and on certain points on the beach, you can point your phone towards the sky and you will see AR artwork. Of course, I tried it out. And like 3 out of 7 artworks worked. For 4 out of the 7 artworks, either the internet connection was too slow or the phone couldn't find the point where it was, so it wasn't projected right, or the projection was too small. And even though I have the newest phone, I got like a Galaxy S24, so like the newest edition of whatever you can find, it still wouldn't work in a way that I thought, okay, this is cool. Like 2 of them were like, oh, that's cool. I can take a selfie with some kind of flying object in the sky. But like the rest of it is a bit disappointing. So what's your take on that? Like, how do you see the technology progress, especially also with the Apple Vision Pro also having its limitations still in terms of mobility and battery duration and stuff?
Yeah, I think we are still we are not there yet in terms of the ideal experience in any of these. And it's going to be a long kind of curve. Again, it's like an evolution. So mobile was an evolution, like more powerful mobile was an evolution, streaming to video was an evolution. And we are still kind of in that phase. And I think in terms of like, you know, people always try to give predictions of like how many years will all of this be a reality, and I don't know what that answer is, but I know that it's going to keep evolving, and the consumer expectation is going to keep becoming for your experiences to get richer. And I think in terms of from the technology side, what's going to contribute to it is of course hardware, network speeds. But then also the software, right? So some of those problems that you had were, sort of restricted by hardware or not having signal. But then it's also about making the best kind of experience that you can for the limitations that you have today with the hardware. Because I think what happens a lot sort of in this space, and we definitely saw a lot in, the first kind of phase of all the virtual reality headsets was that people were making experiences that, would, for example, one of the biggest kind of complaints that you get is like, oh, I get nauseous, right, in these headsets. But that's not a fault of the hardware. It's a fault of how you created the experience on top of the hardware because you didn't recognize the limitations. So I think in terms of the consumer adoption of these technologies, like making software that works well for us, like our principles in that regard are that it has to load really fast. Like people have a short attention span. If a website doesn't load within, a couple of seconds, like you're going to leave. And it's the same, whether the experience is immersive or not, that's the expectation. So the experience has to load fast. It has to look really good. Like it has to look photorealistic. It has to be good quality. Because again, as humans, like that's what our eye is drawn to. So I think there's things we can solve at the application level and make kind of good experiences for the hardware we have today. And then over time, that will just keep getting kind of better and better. And, for immersive experiences, let's say in shopping, what that means is that the experience will get richer. It'll get more dynamic. We'll be able to kind of update it on the fly. It'll be more personalized to you. It'll load even kind of faster. We'll be able to pull your entire catalog into it. Not all of these things we can do today.
Mm. Is there maybe, Neha, just a quick question that's come to my mind when I listen to you. Is there maybe today the platform missing that brings everything together? Because if I look at the internet, I mean, HTML was the coding standard. It's still there today, and all of the things around PHP, JavaScript, and then the server infrastructure. But if I look at the infrastructure for 3D or virtual reality today, there is Apple, there is Google, there's Apple, there is Meta with Oculus, obviously, and Quest 3. But they are not really interoperable, right? And I think the 3D models are different, or we spoke about Zepeto and Roblox. They all have different requirements in terms of 3D models and polygons, not really connected. So I think you have a hard time as a designer or as a brand to deliver your stuff that fits all of those platforms. Is it missing today, the standard, or what's your view on that?
I think it depends on how you look at it, because even today, like, let's not even consider 3D. There's iOS, there's Android, and there's web, right? And as if you're creating a site, you're often creating it for both those devices, but then you're creating native apps, and all three of them have different platforms that you have to develop on. So I think, that is not surprising to me, that it will continue kind of the same way, that each sort of major player will have their own OS. But in terms of the web, there is a standard. WebGL is the graphics library 3D standard that, our platform is developed on today. And that's what most 3D experiences on the web are. And it's quite advanced now, and you can do really advanced things with it. And then what's super exciting in this space is that WebGPU is coming this year. And what WebGPU is a new standard that's sort of on top of WebGL, but it gives the browser direct access to GPU for rendering. And it's already rolled out in Chrome. It's like an experimental version of Safari. So what that will enable is more kind of real-time 3D, which is still, usually a bit slow on browser. It's also like not the highest quality right now. So it's going to enable more real-time 3D, higher quality and faster experiences. And I think that is going to be a huge kind of advancement to immersive on the web. In terms of immersive native, like Vision OS is obviously Apple's new operating system, which follows a lot of the same principles as iOS in terms of development. And then on MetaQuest, you can build applications with Unity or Unreal, which are fairly large at this point. And then in terms of 3D models, there are standards. I mean, all of these platforms, ultimately, there's, yes, each there's USDZ, which is like Apple's format that's like slightly different, but ultimately it's like FBX, OBJ, GLB, these are the standard formats, and you can export from all 3D programs in any of these formats. Typically on the web, you will use GLB. On iOS, Vision OS, you will use USDZ. So yeah, I don't think it's particularly more complicated than the same way that image formats evolved or like video formats evolved. And I think we are reaching the point of sort of standardization now, and maybe that kind of set will become narrower. I think ultimately these are just new skill sets for developers, designers to learn, because we have been trained in the 2D world for such a long time. And even for me, like before starting the company, I had never done 3D. So I spent the first year just learning about 3D development, 3D design. So it is a new phase. I think it's going to become more and more of a common skill set. And we'll see with that an explosion of kind of creativity and applications on top.
Cool. Exciting new opportunities to learn. And also, I think for tech players, not sure if the DAMs, the digital asset management platforms today, can handle 3D, but it sounds like they need to.
Yeah, I think some of them can and some of them can't, but it's definitely going to be the future.
So if we move on to basically the hottest stuff right now. So we do see that there is brands that jump on that bandwagon. We do see that brands are investing in the first experiences on these devices. And the Vision Pro, I think, it's very interesting, because since it's an Apple brainchild, it's like everyone is very intrigued, wants to know what's happening there, even though the market penetration, also given its price point so far, is still rather limited. So why would you say, is it brands invest in this early stage product? And what are your experiences from building those first apps? So what do you see in terms of their response, their customers' responses? So, well, it's a two-part question. So first of all, why do you think they invest in it? And second, what do you see also is as the first learnings from what you guys have built? It's super cool use cases. You guys should check out the website, by the way.
Yeah. So I would say specifically in terms of Apple Vision Pro, it is definitely the most exciting moment for the VR, AR, metaverse, spatial, etc. industry, whatever you call it. And everyone who's been in this space, like this is the moment that we have been waiting for because it is the iPhone moment of this industry, right? And when the iPhone first came out in 2008, it also had its limitations and people were also very kind of skeptical about it. But it was a new form of for, as I was saying earlier, like interacting with the internet. It was a new kind of digital interaction. And the Apple Vision Pro is that. It's way more advanced than any other device that has existed on the market. The resolution is just incredible. And that for me was, having built and tried like every single kind of device on the market, for me, that was the most amazing part because from our target of like retail and shopping, like the resolution and the quality and the detail makes such a huge difference. And it's already the device on the market where you can see things at the highest possible resolution and quality compared to anything else, right? So you can see the long-term potential. Right now, of course, yes, the price point is high and that will come down over time. The hardware will improve over time. The form factor will improve over time, and that's going to increase the penetration. But for us, like, and to the second part of like why brands are investing in this. So overall, brands have been investing in the immersive space for a long time. Like we launched our platform in 2019. We started working with some big brands there, all on the web, right? And then in 2020, there was a huge kind of growth of immersive because of COVID driving the use case. At this point, we have launched over 300 immersive experiences. So this, and 75% of our traffic is on mobile. So this technology is available today. It's available on mobile, desktop, and so on. And so now that you introduce the Apple Vision Pro, it's like it just takes it all to the next level because now you're inside it. You are like fully immersed in these experiences. So for the brands that we work with for the launch, and we are working with many more, who will be releasing the experiences later this year. But for the ones that launched, they were all our existing customers that we had already been working with for immersive experiences on mobile and desktop. And they really saw this as the next opportunity to take the experience to the next level and start getting learnings on this device while it's new. If you're early in the App Store, just like for iPhone, those are some of the biggest apps. Like the earlier you are, the more downloads you will get. So, they're thinking very strategically about the future. But it's really more about testing and learning and figuring out like what really works in this space. So, for we released 4 different apps for kind of fashion, beauty, luxury, and sort of active wear. And each of them are bringing their kind of brand ethos in the device in a different way. And we are starting to now get the early data of, how consumers are interacting with that. We obviously can't share like too much details on the data, but overall, I'll say it's like the interaction rate and time is just way higher than what you will find for the immersive experiences or a regular kind of website on mobile. So we can see the potential. The audience is, of course, still kind of, narrow at the moment. But if we can kind of build something that we know that this is working and this is a behavior that's repetitive, then that's a huge advantage as that grows over the next few years.
So just to comment on that, this means that you see that the basically KPIs on usage of the individual user are very promising. And if you see that, or if we predict that this is a device that maybe 50% of the households will have in the next 5 years, that this use case will be gigantic because it's so much more, it creates so much more connection between the consumer and the brand because simply like the usage time is higher, the individual interaction rate is higher. So is that what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. So the engagement is much higher.
That's what I was
depending on the experience, like overall, we still need to figure out like, how to kind of make it a repetitive habit for people to kind of come back. And that's what we are experimenting with. But the engagement with the brand, how much time they're spending, how they're interacting with products is much higher.
If you zoom in, because you mentioned use cases a couple of times, and if I look at various use cases that are out there in the app, so if I take the Gucci app for example, not your app, but they're a storytelling app. Sabato De Sano, new designer, first collection. I get it. You get very close and immersed into the story and the ecosystem of the designer, even into the head of the designer. On the other hand, I think you created J.Crew. I think that's more of a transactional app. Aloe Yoga is more of the kind of virtual yoga environment. Again, getting closer to the brand, but also doing some recreation and workout. Can you maybe talk a little bit about the various use cases you see relevant in B2C?
Yeah. And the Gucci app is releasing on April 3rd, so I'm super excited to see it when it comes out. But yeah, at a high level, I think, sort of the brand experience, the brand immersion, brand engagement, and then the more kind of shopping and transaction oriented is sort of the way you could divide it. Ultimately, I think for brands, as the apps start to evolve, both of these use cases will exist in their app, right? Like, so if you think about today, brands that have native apps on iOS, it's for their most kind of loyal customers that will download their app. And it has to have kind of the brand piece, and it also has like the easy transaction piece. So ultimately, if this is kind of the new medium with which you're experiencing the internet, all of the elements of the brand, from the brand storytelling to the transaction, have to be present. The power of this device and what's new and unique about it is kind of that immersive, experience, immersive kind of storytelling piece. So that's huge. For the J.Crew app, we actually, the concept of that app is taken from the movie Clueless, and it's Cher's closet. And this is, has been a holy grail dream in the fashion industry for a long time, is like, how do you kind of take your closet and mix and match and create different outfits, and it shows you on a screen, in front of you, and then you can decide, okay, this is what I want to wear. So that's exactly what the J.Crew, app is doing and based on. So it has like a life-size mannequin that's in front of you, and then you can mix and match kind of different tops, bottoms, shoes and handbags, and then you can create outfits for different occasions. So right now they have 4 occasions: work, vacation, parties, and every day. And each of those occasions, you're in a different contextual environment. You can create outfits, save them, and then you can also look at inspiration, content, and campaign images, editorial images for those. So it's really about creating that outfit inspiration. And then it also does have the shopping piece, the purchase piece, with because all of that is shopping. The purchase piece with Apple Pay integration. So you can then kind of really check out with the equivalent of one click, which in Vision Pro is with the, double click on the crown. We did want to have the entire journey implemented in the app and have the Apple Pay integration. All 4 of the apps that we have released have it, because that's, obviously the ultimate goal, and that's where the ROI comes in. And yes, like, it's early days, but that's where it's all gonna go. And then, for the Aloe Yoga app, as you said, it's really much more for it's again, like, very branded to them, which is yoga, meditation, like being in these beautiful, serene environments that the Vision Pro can transport you from your own home. And then you can actually do meditation in like the Grand Canyon or like a beach, and you have spatial audio of like the sounds. And it's really just beautiful. And then you also have the shopping kind of aspect. And then I think the third use case that's also really interesting is for E.L.F. Cosmetics. And their goal was, how do we give people a 5-minute break in their day with this device? So the idea is like, okay, you want to take a break, you put on the Vision Pro, go into the E.L.F. app, and you have different activities that you can do. So like, one of the really fun ones is a paint by numbers game, and you paint by like, it's a different animal you get every day, and you paint by numbers, and it's a really satisfying experience in the device. And then once you finish it, you actually get a 3D version of the animal that you can play with, and somehow it's just like super fun. And it does, I mean, it's not super easy. It does take you maybe 2 to 3 minutes to finish the paint by numbers at least. So that's like one activity. There's another activity where there's like a bunny and he leads you through different kind of desk exercises. And every time we have, shown this demo to people now that the app is live, like people just instinctively start moving their hands and rolling their head, like following the bunny. So I think it's really creative. It's super cool, right? That the brands have been able to get this new medium to express these things and to do these things that were not really possible in other mediums. And again, there's also the shopping aspect, and all of that is there as well in all of them.
Yeah.
But I think it's really cool how the brands thought about how they wanted to bring something different to this medium.
So just to wrap it up, there's a transactional element. Yeah, you mentioned Apple Pay or pay with the blink of an eye in the future. It's more of the experiential things, brand story, getting closer to the brand. And then there was also you mentioned it, Aloe Yoga, recreation, getting a time out, so kind of personal time off, let's call it this way, which can also be a great way to escape your daily routines. And then lastly, also have fun. I think E.L.F, you mentioned E.L.F, gaming could also be a great use case where brands can also, I think, steal a share of the major gaming platforms out there.
So if we look into this even further, and I think it matches quite well, we're talking about all these experiences. And isn't there like sort of two kinds of consumer groups that are today sort of involved in immersive experiences? So there's the classic B2C setup, there's the B2B setup. Like in terms of the apps that your company is building, who are the users that you are primarily focusing on? So far, I've heard about B2C apps. And if so, what kind of generational aspect do you see to it? Is there like demographics that you can see? Is there something more specific you can say about the users, the consumers that actually use that app? If I'm right at assuming that you're mainly in the B2C space right now.
So correct. Sorry, I forgot to kind of mention about the B2B point earlier. But yes, we are primarily, that's where we started. We started in kind of the consumer-facing shopping use case. But we have now also done several, not on the Apple Vision Pro, but on our core kind of web-based platform. We have also started going into various other use cases of immersive 3D sort of technology, including B2B showrooms, including also like, product customization in a very kind of interactive way, as well as some training and internal kind of event use cases. So there's lots of different, use cases of the technology, I think, beyond where we started. And as we grow the company, we are focusing on all of those more now as well. But in terms of consumer and what types of consumers are interacting with these experiences. So first of all, like I think it's helpful to think about even before we think about these experiences, like just e-commerce in general and how we shop, right? And at a very high level, there's kind of two modes of shopping, and it's directed shopping and hedonistic shopping. Directed shopping is you know exactly what you want, and sometimes you're in that mode and you just want to search, filter, and find it, and that's great. And hedonistic shopping is basically where you're doing it for the fun of it and the pleasure of it, and then you also end up buying things. And that's something today you might typically do like in physical retail, because you think of like, oh, like I'm going to go shopping like as an entertainment activity. Like if I'm stressed, I might decide to do that, on a weekend. And so far, online shopping has mainly been about the first category, directed shopping, because most of our interfaces are search, filter, like purchase, like always pushing you to that buy button. So in general, I think immersive experiences are really unlocking the second type of shopping, which is actually a much bigger opportunity, and that exists in retail, in physical retail today, and it's bringing that to digital. And so from a consumer standpoint, this is a very, very generalized kind of version if we really want to think about it in that way. It's like women are often more hedonistic shoppers, men are more directed shoppers. So one, I think like it's an interface that's more appealing to women in general. At a very high level. But even in that, it's like you might have modes, right? Sometimes you like, you're in the directed, you want to be in and out. And then sometimes you actually, want to have fun and you want to get inspiration like, you do when you go to a retail store. So that's kind of how we think about it in terms of like consumer modality of when people might want to shop in this way. And then lastly, in terms of generation, a lot of brands work with us to definitely reach the younger generation, and Gen Z is kind of the primary target for all these types of experiences. And of course, like, Gen Alpha will be kind of coming. That's the primary audience on Roblox. And as they kind of grow up and have more purchasing power, which they are already now, that audience is already so used to 3D immersive interactive, and like, they spend 2.6 hours per day on average on Roblox. So that's more than all social media platforms combined. So that behavior exists. So now, like for us, it's like adding kind of shopping to that behavior. However, the last thing I'll say is, many of the brands that we work with, the high-end luxury brands, their audience is typically older, and we do see really good results even with them, because ultimately, and in that case, we do have to make the experience really photorealistic, like make it look like a real space. It can't be like too gamey looking. But if you do that, it's pretty intuitive. Like, you know how to go through a real store, so you can go through a virtual version of the store on your phone or computer, in a pretty similar way. So it's not like we find that people are confused about how to like interact with it. It's more about like, is that the type of shopping they're looking for right now?
I hear you. Just one additional question around that whole topic. Have you seen, I mean, it's a tough question, but have you seen net profit positive investments by brand into those kind of experiences? Or would you say it is so far mostly marketing invest? Because as you said, the obvious target in the end is a shopping experience. So what brands would ultimately like to achieve is that people tap or click or whatever, just create that purchase. But so far, it seems that right now it's more in the experimental phase, where it seems to be more like a reach marketing, or let's say an experimental marketing tool. Is there experiences that you've seen that actually have positive economical results yet? Or is most of it still sort of in that kind of space?
Yeah, definitely. Like we have lots of customers that we've been working with now for 3 to 4 years who have been using our platform. And yeah, absolutely, they're driving ROI and driving like real revenue from these experiences. It just depends on the goal and how the experience is built. And then also we see over time, like more organic traffic, like obviously initially when you launch, you have to put in the marketing and promotion behind it to know that, for people to know that it exists and to raise the awareness. We are seeing more and more brands kind of adding it to their top nav as a permanent kind of item. So just a couple of examples, like, one of our customers is K18, which is a hair care brand that was acquired by Unilever recently. And so if you go to k18hair.com, you'll see like the virtual world as part of their navigation. And so it's kind of a main consistent sort of thing that they're driving traffic to, and they keep updating their virtual world as they have new products. So I think the experience, obviously, I mean, just like any web page or any website or any app, you can design it for whatever objective you want. Like, Nino, you were asking earlier for AVP apps, is it more brand storytelling or purchase? So some of our, depending on who we are working with at the customer, some of those experiences are very much more focused just on brand storytelling, but some of them are more focused on the products and and driving purchases. And so the objectives and the kind of success criteria depends on that. But ultimately for this, medium to keep growing, it will have to drive ROI for businesses.
Cool. Maybe looking a little bit towards the end of our show, I would be really interested, and we talked a little bit about that topic throughout the entire interview, but very concretely ecosystem. So we talked a lot about the experiences, obviously what brands can do. We talked about the use cases. We talked about the consumers or the B2B groups that might consume that. But we also talked about the current state of the technology. And obviously Apple Vision Pro has just launched their version 1. And if you look at the history of their products, obviously version 1 is always an kind of an MVP, and the batteries might be maybe a little bit tricky to carry that in your pocket, and this will get better. Meta is probably a little bit further ahead and advanced because they have the third generation already. But we also figured out there are more players to this. You mentioned a lot GPUs, like the compute power, NVIDIA maybe, content platforms, obviously massively important. So because if you have great headsets but no content, nobody would consume. Can you talk a little bit about what needs to happen and which players will we see or already seeing that make the entire 3D/virtual spatial computing world a success?
Yeah, there's always kind of a debate about, the sort of headset devices with the chicken and egg problem with the content, or is it the device or is it the content, like which needs to improve to kind of drive adoption. My very strong belief is that it is the hardware and the form factor of the device that is going to drive adoption. All of these devices at the moment are still not at the point that we are going to keep them on our faces for, several hours. Like for most people, like they'll do something in it and they'll kind of like take it out. And so to drive like really kind of long-term adoption, they have to become much more like glasses that you can put very easily, and of course, weigh in the future, contacts or something like that. So I think the innovation and the evolution of the ecosystem, the number one driver in it will be the hardware. So that includes the battery, it includes the processors and GPUs. And what's great is like because of the AI boom, now there's just so much more focus on, GPUs, and they'll get kind of faster, even better, which is then also going to help with graphics rendering, which is of course their core purpose. So I think, so that's kind of the number one. The number two, I would say, is the 3D-fication of all of the content. We talked earlier that, there are these standard like 3D formats and files and all of that. That's great. However, it's like, how do we get more content into the 3D format? So in the case of retail and shopping, it's really the product information. There's very few brands still that have products, in 3D. And so, while we can still create immersive experiences for them with images, and that's what we kind of primarily do today, the experience is going to get even much, much, much better once we can start having all content assets in 3D. We don't focus on, like sort of 3D-fication of products itself, but we focus on the 3D-fication of the experience and the environment. Because that's more complicated, but also that's a wide space in the market. But there's obviously a lot of companies who are focused on kind of making products more 3D. So I think the challenges in that space today are, and I think this will be solved with AI, like in very quick time frame within the next year or so, is that, it has been a very manual process. It's been a very costly process for brands to have 3D models of all of their products. And as they're trying to improve kind of product margin, it's not something that they have prioritized. So I think AI will help a lot in just enabling you to get 3D models of products that are really high quality, really cost effectively. And then once we kind of start getting those assets, then the possibilities of we can get those assets today, but once we get them faster and cheaper, then we can start to create, like, there's so many just options for the types of experiences you can create with them.
And I think it's also
before we're closing it out, just one quick question. It's a quick one, Neha. Out of all the experiences you guys have built, and again, their website, check it out, shows a lot of cool stuff. Which are the 3 ones that you would recommend people to try out the most right now? What are your 3 favorites?
Okay. I would say the first one is the Crate and Barrel experience. It's one of our most advanced kind of virtual store experiences. It has like beautiful, photorealistic quality. It shows you what contextual shopping can look like when you are seeing like kitchen products on a kitchen counter. I would say the second one is our first Roblox experience, which is for Amica. And the way that we look at our platform is that ultimately we want to publish to all 3D platforms and devices, and brands shouldn't have to start from scratch to create an experience on Roblox versus having it on their website. So that's really our vision. And so that's kind of our first foray there. And then the goal is like the same experience in Roblox will currently live with digital products there, but it can then, as a D2C, also live on your site. And then the third one I would say is the Apple Vision Pro, like J.Crew experience with the Clueless closet and a new behavior that has been enabled by the device.
Super cool. Thank you.
Okay, so one more. There is one more thing. Then I also have one last question before we close it out. What is it like to work with Apple on probably the most anticipated product next to the Apple Car, which they just killed, of the last 10 years? How can I imagine being a software player like you, working on the device, working on the experience without being on the market? And is there a killer NDA in place? Or how can I imagine that? How did that work? Have you been locked up?
There's a killer NDA in place, so I can't say much. But no, it was definitely a challenging experience as, working with just a brand new operating system that was rapidly evolving as we were developing on it. But we got a lot of support basically from, all kinds of different teams. And we also, we were the first to implement Apple Pay integration on the device. We also the first to implement SharePlay, which is the sort of FaceTime equivalent. So yeah, a lot of kind of new things that we were trying to do. Our team is amazing, and we kind of just like jump in and we figure it out. But it was challenging, but just really exciting from being in the space and like having waited for this moment. But also like a lot of it is very similar to, iOS in terms of obviously the development philosophy and how you organize things. And then the last thing I would say, which I think is actually really, really great, is that Apple has a lot of restrictions. Like Vision OS has a lot of restrictions in terms of how you can do the UI, what you can do with the UI. And what that means, so like if you have tried the device, like all apps have a pretty consistent like window UI, right? So the way you set up a window, the way you move it, the way you resize it, the way you close it. So all of that is kind of set up. So if you're making, a VR application with Unity or Unreal, like you can basically do anything that you want. So each app has a different interface. But what's really great with Vision OS is like they have restricted that. And I think that will help with the adoption because you don't have to learn a new way to do things from one app to the other. And so that for us was a learning moment because we couldn't really just do anything that we wanted and make the UI exactly, whatever we dreamed up for. We had to work within the constraints of that, but that is actually a good thing. And once we kind of got how all of that works, and we were able to move much faster. So in all of the apps, that we have or that you'll see on the device, you'll see a lot of consistency in terms of just the user interface and the user interaction. So on the front end side, that was a big kind of part of our focus. And we also got a lot of like design review feedback on just best practices. Obviously, these teams have been working on this OS for, I don't know how long, but 8-10 years plus. So getting their feedback on like, okay, this is the best kind of interface. And, for every even icon, it was super helpful.
Great. I think I learned a lot. I would definitely, right after this show, check out Crate and Barrel. Just took a note. But super cool. I want to thank you. Big thank you to you, Neha. It was a pleasure speaking to you and getting a lot of insights firsthand. Obviously, from a software company that has built the first apps on the Apple Vision Pro and is in the virtual reality business for quite some time. And also thanks to you, Nicholas. I had fun in our first show together.
Same here. And well, Neha, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much for being such an interesting and nice conversation partner.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope we can get you back, Neha, maybe in a year and do a little bit of a review.
Hopefully we have lots more new stuff to share. But yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was a super fun discussion.
Thank you.
Next time
See
we
you
do an
soon.
immersive interview, Nino, on the Apple Vision Pro. We
Yeah,
need
let's do
it
it
in
with
3D.
share.
Good idea. I'm sure
Yeah.
we will own one by that time.
The Retail Reality Show with your hosts, Martin and Nino, is presented by Blank and Salesforce. For more information, check out our website, retailrealityshow.com.